I never thought that just one peaceful morning could be the starting point for all the pain I had to go through. It was a Monday morning, like every other day in suburban Oregon. It was sunny, and red maple leaves were falling on the backyard lawn. I was making coffee in the small kitchen, listening to my favorite song by James Taylor, when I discovered the first thing that made my heart stop. My wedding ring was no longer on my finger. That ring has never left my finger for the past 22 years. I never take it off, even when gardening or washing dishes. I panicked, searched every corner of the house, and even asked my pet dog as if it knew something. But the ring is nowhere to be found. I looked around the kitchen, then called my husband, Dan, the person I thought would be with me for the rest of my life. No one picked up the phone. I called again, then texted. Still no response. My heart started pounding, not because of the ring, but because of a growing sense of insecurity. I remembered the night before Dan said he had to go on an unexpected business trip to Seattle for a few days. I even kissed him at the door and put his favorite bag of peanut butter toast in his hand. Then he laughed and said I was the best wife in the world. And then this morning I realized our joint bank account had been emptied. I opened my laptop and logged into my online account. The final transaction was to transfer the entire amount to another account. The recipient's name was a name I had never seen before. Melissa Grant. I felt like someone had just drained the blood from my heart. I trembled and called my daughter, Natalie, who was studying at university in Colorado. She answered the phone after 2 rings. Mom, what's wrong? Your voice is so strange. I didn't want to worry my child, but I couldn't hide my tears. Your dad, he left, and I don't know why. Natalie was silent for a long time, then said, her voice choked up, Don't worry, Mom, I'll book a ticket home right away. But I don't want my child to drop out of school midway. I told my child to calm down, that maybe this was just a misunderstanding. But I knew in my heart, there was no misunderstanding that led to the account being empty and the ring disappearing. That afternoon, I received an envelope from the post office. No sender. In the envelope were divorce papers already signed by Dan, accompanied by a note with only one typed line. I need freedom, don't look for me. I sat down on the chair, my hands shaking. My husband, my companion for more than 2 decades, the person who accompanied me through difficult years, raised children with me, built a house, planted trees, now leaves only 3 words: I need freedom. I don't know how long I sat like that. It could be a few minutes, it could be a few hours. I only know that when it gets dark, I'm still there. A middle-aged woman left behind in a house full of memories with a broken heart. I burst into tears. Not the kind of sobbing like in the movies. I screamed like a wounded animal, as if the pain had to escape my body at all costs. I banged my hands on the table on the wall on my heart, which still refused to believe that Dan had left, that it was all over. A few days later, I tried to clean the house again. I opened the closet and discovered that Dan had taken most of his belongings with him, including his wedding suit and the sweater I knit for him last Christmas. But the most heartbreaking thing is, he left behind all the wedding photos, anniversary greeting cards, and love letters I wrote to him from the beginning of our relationship, all packed in a box placed on my bed, as if he wanted to return all the memories. I discovered the mortgage note for the house in the pile of documents he left behind. You have been using my name to borrow more money for the past 6 months, without my knowledge. The house that I thought was my home is now at risk of being repossessed. If I cannot repay the loan, I was completely devastated. Not only did I lose my husband, I also lost my security trust and sense of control over my own life. I started losing sleep, couldn't eat, and found myself drifting away from everything I was familiar with. Friends are few, relatives are distant. I lived for my family for so long that there was no one left with me when that family broke up. One night, I stood in front of the mirror staring at a woman with disheveled hair, dark circles around her eyes, and a haggard face. I didn't recognize myself. I became someone that Dan could leave without any problems. I have become a pale shadow of myself. And then, at that moment, I understood that if I don't save myself, no one will save me. I removed the wedding photo hanging on the wall. Instead, I wrote a simple note on the wall: "I'm not finished." That night, I slept for the first time after a long week of tossing and turning. Not because I was okay, but because I had just planted a seed. The seed of rebirth. The next day, I received an unexpected call from a woman named Joanne. She said she knew Dan had left and she wanted to see me. In a small cafe in Portland, I heard a secret that shocked me. It turned out I had never really known the man I had been married to for 22 years. I returned to Boston on a warm, humid autumn afternoon, as comforting as an old mother's arms. The sky is gray and the trees are turning orange, red, and yellow, preparing to enter the winter wind. In my heart, the seasons are also changing. It's not really about returning, because I've never had a real corner of my own. New York is where I exist, but it has never been where I belong. As for Boston, even though it's just a city in my memories of college days, for me right now, it brings silence and a safe retreat. I came to stay with Mrs. Ruth, a 70-year-old woman who was my mother's friend before she passed away. I always remember the day I arrived at the door with shaking hands. I knocked on the rough wooden door. She opened the door and looked at me with kind eyes, as if she had been standing there waiting for many years. "Welcome home, baby girl." During the first few weeks with her, I mostly cried. In the morning, I can't get out of bed. In the afternoon, I face my own questions. Why don't I realize it? How can one live when all trust has been betrayed? Regret, self-blame, and resentment are intertwined, like thorns in the chest. Mrs. Ruth didn't ask much. She cooked chicken soup, leaving small pieces of paper on the mirror with the words, "Wait when you're ready." That made me feel safe enough to gradually reopen my soul. Then one day, while rearranging old books in my grandmother's attic, I accidentally opened an old diary book. On the cover, there is a small text, "When the soul hurts, one needs to write it down." It is the diary of young Ruth, written during the years of World War II. She lost a husband and left behind a few messages before finding light again in her life. It was that diary that sparked an idea I will start writing. Write down the pain, write down the loss, write down the things you never dare to say. I took an old notebook and opened it to the youngest. Today, I admit my heart is broken. Every day, after helping Ruth with the gardening or shopping, I sat in my room reading and writing, as if trying to retain my freedom with each word. Gradually, the diary pages became denser. In them, there is not only pain, but also moments I remember about my friends, about the revival of autumn, and about Mrs. Ruth's warm gaze every time she looked at me like a daughter. The unexpected shock came on a Saturday. I received a strange email from the editorial department of a publishing house in Chicago. They said they accidentally visited my anonymous blog without knowing it. Miss Ruth took some of the articles in my diary and reposted them under an anonymous pen name. She chose and changed the character's name, but the feelings and writing style remained the same. I was shocked and partly hurt my privacy had been shared. But when I read the comments under the article, other women shared that they found comfort and courage from my words. I suddenly realized, perhaps I am entering a new journey, not only to revive myself, but also to revive others. I was very surprised and asked Miss Ruth, "Why did you do that?" She just smiled and said, "Because you don't know how you are being resurrected, and this world needs to hear that." Well, I sat in front of the lamp studying at night, a letter from the publisher in my hand. They wanted to meet with me to discuss releasing a book. For the first time in months, I didn't expect that a trip to New Orleans would be the key to helping me come to terms with myself. After discovering that my diary had become a guiding light for many other women, I felt something in my heart soften, but not completely peaceful. I knew I needed to do one last thing, face the person who had broken me, not to demand justice, but to end my days. I still live as if the past still holds control. My ex-husband, Matthew, now lives in New Orleans. I once heard that he had remarried, had 2 children with his new wife, and seemed to live quite peacefully. I no longer resent him like before, but there's still one thing I can't let go of. I want to know why I booked a plane ticket one fall morning. New Orleans welcomed me with the smell of sea breeze mixed with cinnamon from the bakery near the hotel. This city has a vibrant appearance, but also holds many secrets. Just like me, I didn't contact Matthew first. I just want to see you. No need to say anything, but fate always knows how to create unexpected dramas. That afternoon, I walked into a small coffee shop called River and Roast. And there he was. Matthew sat in the corner of the shop by the window. Still tall and tall, his hair has a few more silver strands, and his eyes are no longer as cold as before. I was almost about to turn and walk away, but his eyes caught mine. Both stood up as if by reflex. "Emma?" I nodded. He was silent for a long time. "Shall we sit for a bit?" Not sure why I agree. I read the diary. He said when we finished ordering drinks, I was startled. "You what?" A friend sent me a link to the article. I recognized it immediately. The tone, the details, that was you. I read it all. I was silent. "I'm sorry for everything. I don't know what to say. How many years have I waited for this apology? But when it came, I just felt empty." "Why?" I asked softly. "Why did you leave like that day? Without a word? Without a message?" Matthew looked at me, his eyes slightly watery. "I'm scared. I know I've betrayed. Not just a physical betrayal, but a betrayal of the woman who sacrificed her youth for me. I don't have the courage to look you in the eye and admit it." My heart ached, not because of pain, but because of truth. I used to think I wasn't good enough, that I was the reason you left. I lived like a shadow of myself for 3 years. No, don't ever think like that again. You're the only one I'm ashamed of missing out on." We were silent for a long time. I looked out the window. The oak tree in front of the restaurant has begun to change its leaves. Time is magical. It cannot heal everything, but it makes us strong enough to mend our wounds. I didn't come to ask for anything back. I said, I just want to know so I can actually move on. "And now you can," he said, smiling slightly. I stood up. "Thank you for being honest today. Wish you happiness." I left the cafe feeling as light as the wind. For the first time in many years, I no longer felt like I needed to fight the memory. I went through it. In the evening, I returned to the hotel and opened my laptop. There were hundreds of emails in my inbox from strange women. They said that my diary helped them have the courage to say goodbye, helped them realize their self-worth, helped them understand that hurt is not the end. And then there was an email that stunned me, sender Rachel Anderson, title, "Your daughter needs to see you." Rachel wrote that she was Matthew's second wife, and that their stepdaughter, Lily, 17, had recently read my diary and wanted to meet the person who wrote it. Rachel said she wasn't angry or upset. On the contrary, she thanked me, because thanks to that diary, Lily overcame depression. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. A part of my life that I once thought was meaningless is now a light that saves others. I realized sometimes forgiveness is more than just closing an old chapter. It's about starting a new chapter for someone else. I stood in front of a small cafe on the outskirts of Boston, still clutching a text message from Lily, Thomas's new wife. She wants to see me. No anger, no blame, just a calm, polite invitation. I read and reread that message nearly 10 times before deciding to agree. Partly out of curiosity, partly out of a strange sense of comfort, knowing that someone is also in pain because of that man like I was. The shop door jingled as I entered. The warmth and the spreading smell of baking made my heart soften a bit. I recognized Lily immediately. She was wearing a light gray coat. Her eyes were tired, but her gaze was not blaming. When our eyes met, she stood up, reached out to shake her hand like an old friend. "Thank you for coming, Emma," she said softly. I nodded slightly. "I'm also curious to hear." We sat down in a quiet corner. Lily took out a small notebook. The diary I had written sent to the TV station as an anonymous story. I thought they didn't air it, but it turns out they aired it on a show about recovering from a broken marriage. And Lily, during a sleepless night, heard it. "You don't know who I am when you write these lines," Lily said, turning the pages. "But I recognize myself in your struggles and despair. I see a woman who once believed, who sacrificed, and who was betrayed." I feel choked. Something rose in my chest. Not hatred, but sympathy. A kind of love between two women who once stood at opposite ends of pain. "I know it's over now, Lily," I said. "I'm not angry with anyone anymore. I just want to continue living." Lily was silent for a moment. Then she bowed her head as if she were pondering something very important. "I need help," she whispered. "Not for me. It's for her. Baby, Ellie Thomas, and I's stepdaughter. She's struggling with the same depression I saw in your eyes. It's repeating the same cycle of hurt. And I'm afraid. I'm afraid she won't make it." I was dumbfounded. Memories of nights alone, of the first glass of wine to forget, then the second glass to ignore, the mornings of not wanting to get out of bed. I see myself in that girl. "I'm no expert," I replied quietly, "but I understand. I've been in that place." Lily looked at me, her eyes almost desperate. "You don't need to be a doctor. You just need to be you. Someone who survived, someone who went through it and is still standing. You are living proof that people can overcome. If Ellie listens to me, maybe she won't feel as alone as she does now." I looked at her then, out the foggy window. The space outside seems to be stagnant. Part of me, the weak part, the part that just wanted to retreat, hesitated, but another part, stronger, began to stir. I nodded. I first met Ellie on a Sunday afternoon at a community youth center in Somerville. The girl sat crouched in the corner of the room, her long hair covering her face, her ears wearing headphones. I walked over, didn't say anything, just sat next to him. After a few minutes, I handed him a piece of paper, the first excerpt from my diary. Ellie didn't look at me, but she took it. A few seconds later, she took off her headphones. I don't say anything more. We sat in silence. The next day I returned, Ellie still didn't speak. I give another excerpt, this time about the day I packed my suitcase and left after discovering my husband was having an affair. About fear, about feeling defeated, about suppressed crying. On the third day, Ellie asked a question. Have you ever wanted to end everything? That question was like a cold blade. I nodded. So many times. But then I thought, if I disappear, who will tell my story? Who will tell people like you that this pain is not forever? That was the moment Ellie burst into tears, and I hugged her as if hugging my old self again. From that day, I started going to the center regularly. I wrote down my entire recovery journey into small stories. No dogmas, No advice, just sharing. I talked about the mornings when I had to force myself to brush my teeth, about the first time I took a walk again after not leaving the house for a month, about the old woman in the library who smiled at me and said, "You still have the light in your eyes, don't let it go out." Ellie gradually opened up. And it's not just her. A few other children in the group also became interested in the stories I told. The empty eyes gradually had a ray of hope. Lily came to see me after 3 weeks. "She's changed," she whispered. "She's starting to eat again." "It's been a while since I've seen Ellie smile, Emma. You're not just helping her. You're helping me too." I smiled. But in my heart, I knew I was the one being helped. It was Ellie, her fragility, that made me find the reason to stand up again. That evening, I sat alone in my small apartment. On the table are pages of the manuscript I'm writing. No longer a diary, but short stories for those who are lost. I named the collection Light from the Fragments. I looked in the mirror. The woman in there is no longer the one who once collapsed because of betrayed love, but the one who has resown the seeds of hope with the pain that once burned him. And for the first time in years, I actually felt alive. But just when I thought the past was truly asleep, an unexpected letter appeared from someone I thought I would never hear of again. Thomas. I received Thomas's letter with trembling hands, my heart filled with excitement. Over the years, I have learned to forget the man who touched my heart. But at this moment, the words on the paper were like small flames burning into an old wound. "Emma, I don't expect you to forgive me. He knew what he did was irredeemable, but I want to say thank you. You've helped Ellie more than you know. I'm sick, Emma, end-stage renal system, and I just want to see you one last time." The letter was accompanied by a medical report. Thomas hid his illness all this time. He is facing the collapse of an entire empire. And the last person he wants to see again is me. I hesitated. It took me a lot of time to fight back to regain trust in myself. Meeting Thomas again means facing everything he has buried. But Sister Emma... Ellie's voice startled me. "Dad is not going to make it through tonight. I was at the mine and told you." I said only trusting you will understand. With just that one sentence, I knew I had to go. I arrived at the hospital in a light coat, my face dim in the fluorescent lights. The door to the ICU room opened, revealing a small Thomas lying on the hospital bed, lines woven all over his body. For the first time in many years, I looked at him without anger. "I'm here." Thomas opened his eyes, smiling weakly. "Thank you. I don't want to leave without saying sorry." I held his hand. For the first time, I felt clearly forgive, not because that person deserves it, but because you deserve inner peace. I forgive you, and myself too. Later that night, Thomas passed away in his sleep. Surprisingly, I didn't cry. I walked under the dawn sky, feeling the first rays of the day on my skin. I thought I got over it all. But fate is once again a challenge. 3 weeks later, Ellie suddenly disappeared. The girl left a long message. "I don't belong to this world." I tried, but Emma knows well enough how painful it is to be left behind, to be pushed out. Please go. I remember the moment when I also wanted to give up. This little girl is retracing the path she once went through. And this time, I can't let anyone fall anymore. I went to the treatment camp at the suggestion of Thomas's old friend. Ellie is there, undergoing psychiatric treatment after a suicide attempt I don't come to condemn. I sat down next to Ellie and shared about the darkest days of my life. There were times when I thought I'd never see the light again. Ellie. And then a miracle happened When someone stopped trying to hold my hand, I'll be the first person to do that to you. Ellie looked at me, tears streaming, and nodded silently. It's not the times we fall, but the times we get up that define a person. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm becoming someone better, and my journey still continues. I woke up in a completely white room, staring blankly at the mottled ceiling. The faint sound of a candle flickering somewhere made my heart skip a beat. A young nurse opened the door, smiling. "Good morning, Miss Ellie. You're safe." I felt like I was dying and coming back to life. Part of me wants to die, wants to lose everything, but another part is gnawing at me with the question, who am I? After 2 days in the hospital, a psychologist was sent to talk to me. She wore neat glasses and called me Ellie, as if we had forgotten each other from a previous life. "Do you know who found you?" I shook my head. I just remember wandering around an alley, then I got so bored that I became stupid. "There's someone tracking your car. His name is Matthew Walker." Chest again. Someone still remembers me. Matthew came to visit me the next morning. I looked at him looking like an older man driving a pickup truck, dusty and stiff. But when he placed his hand on my shoulder, it was so gentle that it made my tears overflow. "I don't have anything to do here anymore." I lowered my voice. "Then let's go back to your farm for a while." "But I know it all. Ellie, once you fall, it's over. What matters is that you're alive, and I'm here. Matthew's farm in Vermont is as beautiful as a dream. Sometimes when I open the river early in the morning, sitting on a hill, looking down at the valley, I feel the world put me here to revive. I'm like a vegetable feeding the chickens, working with my hands instead of my head. Every evening, Matthew reads me books by Wendell Berry or Maya Angelou. Some days I'm still tired and cry when I see Thomas's old shirt in the suitcase, but Matthew just stood behind me quietly, placing his hand on my shoulder as if trying to exert strength. "I love you. I have shunned love." I whispered, "I love you enough to wait." 6 months later, on a quiet autumn day, I reread what I had written about my journey. The notebooks are simple but full of sincerity. I decided to send it to a magazine for middle-aged women. One particular Sunday afternoon, they wrote back, "We'd like to publish this article." For the first time after years of emptiness, I felt like I meant something to someone in this world. "I'm going back to New York," I told Matthew during a walk around the hills. "They invited me to a TEDx talk about the journey of recovery from toxic love. I know you will go further and further." I laughed and held his hand. "I leave, but my heart stays." Matthew nodded as if he already knew the answer. "As long as you live truthfully, I'll take care of the rest." I returned to Seattle on a sunny morning after many years of drifting around Europe. The first thing I did when I set foot in the old city was not to meet someone, but to go to the shore of Green Lake, where I often jogged when I was Daniel's wife. I'm no longer afraid of pain. That left me a bit confused because it marks a forgetfulness of the soul, when a cut from the deceased often becomes hard and disagreeable. I was walking to a small coffee shop nearby when I saw a familiar face. Daniel. He was sitting with a young woman who looked successful and confident. My seat had already placed an order before noticing him. Not far apart facing each other, but no one said anything. Daniel is getting old, or better yet, losing the glow on my face that I thought would never go off. In that small moment, I realized that the poor woman in the story was no longer me. It's Daniel himself. He may be rediscovering himself through a new woman. Or maybe I'm losing a part of my soul like I did. I'm not against emotions. There's also no need to create a fake greeting. We were just two strangers in a crowded cafe. In my hand is a new diary. I opened the first page and wrote on it, "Today, I went full circle back to this place, but with a completely new heart. You know, there are wounds that once healed, people can laugh at when they remember them. I'm getting to that point. And the most surprising thing is, there is no need to win anyone back to prove your worth. You just need to make peace with yourself. Someone has said, wounds make people bloom from the depths of fire. I returned to Austin, Texas, after many years away. On the first day I came here, spring was coming. Bluebonnet flowers bloom on the endless grass hills. The scene is peaceful like my soul after the storm has passed. I don't come back to search for the past, but to build something called giving back. I opened a small center for women who have suffered mental abuse to confide. It is small and humble, but full of love. I named that center Hollow to Hope. There, stories are shared, pains are named, and stripes in the soul are marked as witnesses of awakening. I don't choose to go on a grand stage to talk about myself. Instead, I choose small talk sessions, meditation sessions, and hand-holding sessions. During a sharing session, a woman cried and said, "I thought I was the only one who failed." I looked into her eyes and saw a reflection of myself not long ago. "You've been through that place?" I said, "And you know failure is not the end. It is the beginning of another journey." During seminars, many people come just to sit still and listen. They are not ready to share, but they need a sense of belonging. And Hollow to Hope is a place where they don't have to be anyone else but themselves. I recall one afternoon standing in the small kitchen, making tea for a group of women who came to participate in a meditation session. Outside the window, the sunset dyed the western sandhills yellow. The feeling of peace there made my heart choke. Many years ago, I thought I just wanted to escape this city. But now, I'm lying here on my knees. This is my home. In that moment, I understood rebirth does not have to be glorious. Sometimes it's elegant, simple, and brings a warm feeling like a cup of tea on a spring afternoon. I never thought that just one video sharing my story could change so many things. Everything started with a short clip I filmed in my small office, which used to be an old reading room. I talk about the pain of being left behind, feeling lost in life, and the journey to find myself. There's no professional lighting, no fancy editing, just a woman learning to deal with her trauma. A week later, that video had more than 300,000 views. I received thousands of comments, mostly from women. Those who had silently endured betrayal, had been looked down upon and thought they were no longer valuable. They not only watched, but also wrote their own stories in the comments section. Every word is a scar, a tear that hasn't yet fallen. I read them all. I wrote down every line that made my heart choke. And I know I can't stop at telling stories. I needed to create a safer place, a community where no one had to feel alone in their pain. And then I created From Hollow to Hope, a small forum, a Facebook group, a regular email, anything that would connect people. I publicly share every tool that has helped me recover, from writing exercises to meditation to finding self-esteem. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm just someone who once hit rock bottom and crawled back up little by little. Not long after, the same women who sent me messages thanking me started sending back videos of their own. The clips are shaky, but true. I watched each one. Then I understood I was no longer the center of the story. This story is now beyond me. There was a time when I thought about death. A woman named Julie said in the video, "Until I accidentally watched your video. You said, we don't lose when we are left behind. We lose when we let others take away our value." Why? She burst into tears and asked herself, who gave me the right to abandon myself like that? I don't answer. I just sat there, my hands covering my face, tears running through my fingers. One morning, I received an email from an independent media organization inviting me to share my journey on their podcast. I hesitated. I am not a celebrity, not a social activist. I'm just a wife who was left behind and collapsed. But then I remembered Julie's words. Who gave me the right to abandon myself like that? I accepted. The recording session took place in a small studio in Portland. In front of me was a host named Monica, a woman in her 50s, salt and pepper hair, eyes as warm and deep as the ocean. She doesn't ask social questions. She asked, "What made you decide to continue living after everything collapsed?" I smiled, but my eyes were stinging. Because I want one day, my daughter, if I have children, won't have to learn to love through abandonment. When the podcast aired, my email almost exploded. A high school teacher sent a letter saying that she had the whole class listen to the sharing. A single mother wrote that she began planning to return to school after 10 years of dropping out because her husband did not allow it. A 68-year-old woman sent a selfie with the caption, "Thank you for helping me learn to love myself again." I can't believe it. Just a few months ago, I was sitting in front of the mirror wondering who I was. Now I don't need that answer anymore. I am becoming who I need to be, not perfect, but alive. One Friday night, while I was making chamomile tea, the phone rang. It's Ellie, the only friend I still keep in touch with throughout this journey. You should turn on the TV. Ellie gasped. The news just broadcast a segment about you tonight. I turned on the TV, my heart pounding. On the screen is an image of part of a clip I once posted cut together with the narration. A woman who was betrayed turned her pain into a call for thousands of other women to stand up. I held my breath. Below are the words running, "From pain to hope, an ordinary person's journey to healing." I sat there in the small room holding a cup of cold tea. The feeling is not one of pride, but of relief. Relieved that finally I don't have to hide anymore. That same evening, I received a strange email subject, "We need your help." The sender is a founder of a nonprofit organization in California specializing in supporting women suffering from psychological and financial abuse in marriage. She wrote that they had been following my journey and wanted me to be a speaker at an upcoming conference. I spent the whole night thinking. But in the end, I understood. My journey didn't end with standing up. It only really started when I helped others do the same. And so, I prepared to step on stage for the first time. Not to talk about the man who had abandoned me, but to talk about all the women who had never been heard. I rewrote every sentence, practiced every paragraph. Not because I wanted perfection, but because I owed them a clear truth. You may be buried in the mud, but you are not the mud. The door to tomorrow is ajar, but I'm not alone anymore. I am walking with them. Women like me once called useless, once considered a burden, but now we are the voice, and this time no one can extinguish it. I stand in front of the TEDx stage, not as a victim of betrayal, but as a survivor who has gone through brokenness and has the courage to rebuild my life. The wings were blazing on the stage, the light shone on my face, and I saw hundreds of pairs of eyes watching. I opened my talk with a story very familiar to me, but completely new to the audience. I have been left behind in a human land. I have been hurt and humiliated by love. I have fallen a second time when I believed and hoped, but those same falls have made me stand here today. The auditorium was quiet, as if breathing together with what I had gone through. I recounted the first days of abandonment, wandering in a strange city, with only one suitcase and empty eyes. I sat in a small cafe until my eyes hurt, just to have people say, "Are you okay?" I remember the moment I met Clara. an elderly woman who had lost her husband but always had a smile. She said, "When I was your age, I also thought I would die for a man. Then at one point I suddenly realized, why would I entrust my life to someone?" Clara not only gave me the truth to live by, but also reminded me of my original grace. I started writing just short stories about women, about times when they were covered and stood up. But readers shared that they saw their images in it. I realized what I went through. My pain was not just my own pain. I decided to open a free writing and sharing class. Initially, only 5 people came after a month. There were 20 people. Some are gay, some are going through divorce, some are still in an abusive marriage. They cry, they laugh, and they relax. I was invited to speak at school in a sharing session for students about how to handle rejection and failure in love. Then there are seminars on psychological recovery for victims of domestic violence. Everywhere I go, I repeat Clara's words. People can treat us with negativity, but we have the right to decide what we will treat ourselves with. Returning to the moment on the TEDx stage, I concluded the talk. When the man left me in Europe as a joke, he didn't know that he was giving me a chance to become the person I always wanted to be. And today, the person standing before you is not a victim, but a living witness of resurrection. Applause exploded in the air. I felt Clara sitting in the last row, remembering what she had said. I went down, kissed Clara on the cheek, and asked, "Will you go on a sharing tour with me?" She smiled and held my hand. "Let's go see the other girls stand up like you. Let's go." Life sometimes pushes you into a deadlock just to remind you know how much you will get up and what is really important to you. Believe that you are worthy of happiness, even if you have been hurt. Please share this video with those who need a ray of hope to let them know they are not alone. Please like, comment, share videos, and remember to subscribe to the channel to accompany the next revival journeys, because we deserve a life of love and faith.